G'day everyone, welcome to another episode of the Purple Coloured Glasses. In this episode I'll go through my tips for round 19, how I fared, and the draw, Freo against Richmond. So let's get started. So I ended up with 7 out of 9 for the round. The draw got counted as a correct tip. And the first game was the Friday night clash, Freo against Richmond. And I watched the first half of this game. I thought it wasn't the greatest start in patches for Freo. We weren't letting them get a massive run on, but that second quarter in particular wasn't great. Then went down to the local and watched the second half with the chicken carbonara linguine. That was quite tasty, but quite tense as well, because that last quarter it felt like we were all over them. Had quite a few entries and just couldn't make the most of it. I think Logue kicked a behind. I think Aish missed everything. Sarong missed everything. Banfield might have missed everything as well before a snap, so we just couldn't put any score on the board. And then Richmond went down the other end, and I think a lot's been talked about the Michael Frederick smother against Bolter and Cumberland playing on. We're watching it in a pub without much commentary, it's pretty quiet. And so yeah, you just see him play on, and the umpire doing the arm waves times out, and how devastated he was. I think a draw is a fair result in terms of sort of the balance of play. I think Richmond definitely had their moments. It's fair to give them some credit. I think when Freo got the game on our terms, we looked like we really controlled the game, and Richmond didn't really threaten at all, but we didn't look threatening that much going the other way. I think in that second half, Richmond only kicked one goal, which was that Bolton goal out the back after we'd pretty much held them at bay, or we were just smashing their forward half for a solid 15 minutes, and we just couldn't get that contested mark. I think Fife going out injured just impacted our ability to bring the ball to ground. We didn't have Rory Lobb up there to just take a clunk. Sean Darcy's marking has really dropped off in the last couple of weeks. I thought it was just a one-off game in that loss against Sydney. But a real strength of ours earlier in the year is the contested marking we had sort of all around the ground. So Darcy, Lobb, Taberner, and Logue, when we were sort of rotating him forward, he was taking a few clunks as well. Down back, we looked a lot more settled. In terms of our defence, I have been a bit worried about that. We've been shipping a lot of points between sort of 70 and 90 most games. When this was much better from a defensive perspective. Richmond were folding a lot of numbers back as well, so it was very hard for us to take the game on with handball and just work through them. We got a couple of goals in the first half like that. I think they tightened that area of the game up. We got a couple of easy ones sort of out the middle, chains of hand passes, and I think Aish got a goal like that, Brody got a goal like that, and they're not really goals you want to give up. They're ones you should be defending, so Richmond tightened up in that space. And their tools just dominated ours. I think, Taberner had no real impact in the game. He's a bit of an enigma, old Taberner. He can look $1 million, and then he just has games like this, and you're just like, where are you? Who I thought played well, so I thought Hayden Young was really good. I thought Brendan Cox really good. Most of our back line, I'd give him a tick. Walker's looking a bit shaky. He didn't end up getting the matchup on Bolton. That was Chapman. I think that's probably just a better matchup in terms of when he was floating forward, and Chappie's actually a bit faster than you probably led to believe. Decent aerial mark. One of Bolton's goals is Alex Pearce kicking an absolute howler, which in a tight game like this, where it's a draw, you look back at all these sorts of things. But Pearce has kicked an absolute shocker straight to Bolton, 10 metres out. He strolls in the goal, so you can't really put that against Chappie. And the other goal was sort of out the back against the run of play. So I thought he did quite well, Chapman, against Bolton, when he was in those forward positions. In terms of our sort of midfield setups, I thought Sarong was probably one of his better games in a while. Mundy had some good moments. Brayshaw wasn't getting involved as many of the attacking setups. I think he was good sort of around sort of general play, but he wasn't getting involved in those more attacking plays. I think Akers, he's working himself back into the game. We've had some guys that were had some really strong form earlier in the year that are just a bit out. Akers come back off an injury. Third game back, hopefully he's a bit better. Taberner, when he has been in the side, has played better. Like, kicked 7 goals against the Bombers. I know they're not much chop, but our backs seem to be a bit more in form. And yeah, I think Darcy is a big one. I think our small forwards as well are just not really having that impact. Like Schultz has some good games, has some quiet games. Freddie, it looked like they'd try to roll him up to the stoppages to get involved. And he wasn't really getting his hands on it. He was a bit fumbly as well. He wasn't clean, didn't put his body on the line in some of those contests he maybe could have. Walters, he's putting on a lot of pressure. He's often quite high in the pressure acts and stuff, but he kicked a decent goal. But we're not really seeing those creative opportunities for him. And like, even when we do make a contest, it's like our guys aren't crumbing it. Like, it's getting out the back, and teams are just handball training it out and then kicking to the open side. And yeah, we just can't make a lot of those contests. Our clearance work has definitely picked up in the last couple of weeks. Like, it's just we can't get everything together at the same time at the moment, which I think is just a bit of a symptom of being a bit of a younger team, getting a bit tired. And also teams, I think, have put a bit of work into us. When you're up at the top of the table, teams look how to pick you apart. I think Richmond kicked a lot shorter than they probably would normally play. And yeah, it was a bit of a tactical battle. So we've got our defence right, I think, this week. We didn't get our sort of aggressive ball movement going. We've been kicking some decent scores. Like, we've been getting up in the 90s a couple of weeks, and all we need to do is kick 60 or 70 points this week and we win the game. So don't think we did too much wrong. And it's much better than losing. Some people really hate the draw. I sort of grew up playing soccer, so I was used to draws. I don't know why some people think it's so weird in AFL. For finals, it definitely makes sense, but you know, there was a lot of time. You have scores of 6 and 1, so to actually get a draw is not easy, and it's pretty rare. So I think that's fair. Moving on to the next game, and maybe just before I jump on the next one, big game up against Melbourne next week. It's essentially a playoff for the top 4, I think. So we're keen for that one. Hopefully the boys do the retro round proud. I think they won last time we rolled that out. So be going to that game, and hopefully it's a cracker. So Saturday we had North up against Hawks. And I went the Hawks in this one. I was pretty glad I did, because at quarter time the game was pretty much over. It was 8 goals to nothing, or 7 goals to nothing. Bit of a shootout in the last quarter, but yeah, Hawks were never really in danger from North Melbourne here, and it's a bit of that bounce back factor. I thought North would use a lot of emotional energy getting up last week, and yeah, saw the expected result. Sydney against Adelaide. So this game started out very similar. Sydney kicked 8 goals or something. They looked pretty much home and hosed. Adelaide came firing back, but really they just gave up too big of a lead in that first quarter, and every time they sort of kicked 2 or 3 goals, Sydney would kick 1 or 2 and just keep that gap on them. That was the sort of expected result, I think. Sydney just too strong, but they're not an unbeatable team, Sydney, at the moment. You can get them going the other way, but they are in a good patch of form at the moment. Port against Geelong. Yeah, this was an interesting one as well, I think. So Geelong jumped out to a bit of a lead, and as Port have done a few times this year, it's almost like once the lead gets like, oh, we've got nothing to lose, they just kick into gear. So at half time they were down by 30 odd, I think, and they just came out of the blocks. It was like goal, 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 and they actually took the lead. I think they're up by 7 points. So previous games this year against Freo, they came storming back after we had about a 40-point lead. The Blues had a 50-point lead, and they almost reined them in. It's almost like once the game is at a stage where it's like, oh, we got nothing to lose, that's when they play like their best football. And maybe the mistake in this game was they took the lead and they kind of went back to playing the way they were before. And Geelong just, you know, reasserted their dominance in the game, and ended up winning this one. Quite a professional performance, away from home. Just get the win however you can. They're not that unbeatable Geelong aura. I think a lot of people are sort of jumping on the Geelong bandwagon to win the flag at the moment, but I think it's still a really even year. Like, there hasn't been one of the top 4 teams or any team in the 8 who's gone on a run and absolutely pumped some of the other top 4 sides. So Melbourne did that to Brisbane a couple of weeks ago, but then they've been pretty bad since then. So there hasn't been that sort of real dominant side that you'd be scared of playing. I think everyone's a fairly decent chance, if you get to that prelim or grand final stage. So yeah, I think Geelong deserve to be favourites at this stage for the flag, but by no means unbeatable. Then Brisbane against Gold Coast. Watched a fair chunk of this game. I was rotating between this game and the Bulldogs Melbourne game because they were on at the same time. There was a gap of about 15 minutes. So you get the quarter time break, swap over. The Brisbane Gold Coast game was quite an entertaining one to watch. Brisbane sort of got out of the blocks early. Gold Coast reined them back in, took leads for portions of the game, but just weren't really able to close it out. And they've really come along this year, but they've just got those signs of a younger team running out a bit of puff. They've had some key injuries as well. So some ACL, like Weller's out, I think Butterick's out. Ben King hasn't played the entire year. I think they're a team next year can make that real jump into the top 8. And they've got a pretty good list. Everyone's playing some decent footy. I think Witts has been good. Rao was solid. I thought Took Miller was excellent in this one. But yeah, they just didn't really have enough contributors compared to Brisbane. And this is the sort of performance they were probably wishing had put up at Metricon earlier in the year. They got smashed in that game. This was a much more competitive performance. So the Dogs against Melbourne. So this is the first tip I got wrong. So I'd gone the D's, and I'd say most of the game Melbourne looked not home and hosed, but they looked comfortable. It looked like one of those games where you had two really good sides going at it. Melbourne had put on a bit of a gap at the start of the game, and then the Bulldogs would reel them back in, kick a couple of goals, and then Melbourne would just kick one or two and settle the game. And then Bulldogs would kick a couple of goals, and then Melbourne kick a couple of goals, and just keep them at arm's length. McRae could barely get his hands on it, and then really came to life in that sort of late second quarter, second half. Jamari Uguhagen with 5 goals was big for the Dogs. Melbourne, there's been a lot of criticism on their front half, and they've kicked 100 points in this game. What's really strange was their back half gave up 110 points. I can't remember if Lever played. I think Lever actually was an out in this one because I remember I'm trying to remember what his name. Tomlinson played in this one. So I think I remember Lever being on the team sheet when teams were named. So I'm assuming he was a laid out from this game because I've heard talk he'll come back in this week against the Dockers. So it's a really interesting one now for Melbourne because they've got Freo in Perth. They've then got to play Carlton and Collingwood. Those will be tough games. And then they've got to play Brisbane at the Gabba. They could go 0-4. I think that's unlikely, but it's possible, right? And this was the team that was unbeatable, and every team was just playing off to play the privilege of finishing second. Was the chat sort of 2-3 months ago. They've lost 5 of the last 8, and they're looking very shaky. I thought they were quite good in this game, but I think defensively they gave up a bit. Bulldogs went these really short, flat kicks through the ground, and not kicking it to Jackson and Gawn down the line. So it'll be interesting to see how Melbourne and Freo match up because we put Logue up forward initially to counteract May. But other teams have sort of been getting around them by just being more precise with your ball use and not just bombing it long to the interceptors. So Freo's got a team that can do that. Whether we will be interesting. Melbourne are generating a lot of scores out of their centre bounce clearance work. So Gawn, Viney, Petrarca, Oliver. And that's where they got a run on goals against us when we last played them at the MCG. And then we really shut them down in that space after half time. And if our interceptors are playing well, it could be tricky for Melbourne next week. But I'll say that for later in the week, the preview video. Carlton up against GWS. This was sort of professional results you've come to expect from Carlton this year. These were the ones in previous seasons they'd lose. They've just got a good core of players. They look well coached, and they just win these sorts of games you're supposed to win. It was close-ish at halftime. GWS, maybe if they had something to play for, might have given Carlton a game, but they looked defensively frail, let's say, GWS, and surprised they're not copping a lot more flack. It's like we got rid of the coach earlier in the year, so now we're immune to all criticism, but they've been pretty bad. I think they're third last on the ladder, and they're just playing shootout football. It's almost like, I'm not sure how much influence Mark McVeigh has as the sort of fill-in or standing coach until they get a replacement. But it's almost like, yeah, go out there, boys, just play your game. They're not really playing with a real great structure or system, and they're really relying on just amazing performances from their individual players rather than a cohesive team effort. MCG, Collingwood against Essendon. I tipped the Bombers, and they've let me down. And I thought they'd let me down at the start of the game when the Pies were up by 38 points or something at quarter time. We're going, oh, what have I done? I've tipped the team that I've ragged on all year, and now I've trusted them and they've let me down. But the greater disappointment was yet to come because Essendon stormed back into the game. We're probably the better side for sort of second quarter onwards, and had a chance to win it at the death. The run-up didn't look great from Harrison Jones. Hits the post, and the Bombers are just like completely out of position. They had 4 or 5 guys in the centre, like, oh yeah, maybe we'll just kick the talk with a minute to go. But Collingwood have just played this beautifully. Like Pendlebury kicks it up, Darcy Moore, Bianco to, I've already forgotten his name. He plays up forward, but I'm gonna look this up because it's going to annoy me. But he is one of their better players, and I reckon they're a much better team when he's in the side. Jamie Elliott. So kick to Jamie Elliott. So first, the quick play. Darcy Moore's like goal side. He's already running away. The wingers just like Bianco's come right out, and there's no one really tracking him. Acres of space. He turns around. The spare doesn't like absolutely crush Jamie Elliott. Like he doesn't spoil over the top. He doesn't just body him. He doesn't like cork him. He doesn't like you can't really give away 50 in that situation. Like even if he hits him and he gives away a free kick, well, he's going to mark it anyway, right? And you potentially made it a little bit tougher. But Jamie Elliott, like nerves of steel. It was. It reminded me of that. There was a derby where Freo against West Coast, where Ballantyne's taken a mark in a very similar position. It's after the siren, and he's come pretty close and he's hit the post. But Jamie Elliott, he just knew straight away, went back, absolutely nailed his kick. And that took Collingwood to 9 wins in a row, and unfortunately into the top 4, knocking Freo out of those spots. And I didn't tip Essendon because it was good for Freo. I actually thought the Pies were due for a down game, but they've just found a way to win it. I thought as soon as the Bombers hit the post, I thought, here you go. I bet you Collingwood will go end to end here and kick a goal. I didn't think it would be like that. I thought it would be like a stoppage, and like someone like Taylor Adams or like just snaps it out of a pack and it like goes through, right? But no, that was, you got to tip your hat to Collingwood. You've got to be a good team to win 9 in a row. So they're the informed team of the comp at the moment. Just see if they can, them and Geelong, they're on pretty big winning streaks. If they can take that into the finals, you never know what can happen. They've still got a lot of mature guys from that 2018 side, which is probably overlooked a bit. You got Pendlebury and Sidebottom a bit more towards the end, but you've got Crisp, you've got Adams, you've got Darcy Moore down back, Howe. Like, they've got a solid back line, good tools. Myercheck's competing. And I think Jamie Elliott's a quality small forward. And you've got some guys on the fringes who are playing some decent football. It helps when you've got 2 Dacos boys come in, and the Josh Dacos goal, I think that was incredible. Bounced it to himself, ran around some blokes, snapped it. It's probably leading goal of the year at the moment. And then the last game, St Kilda against West Coast. There were some stages here early on where it looked like Saints might mess this up and lose to West Coast. West Coast, again, very efficient in front of goal. I do worry what their percentage and win-loss record would have looked like if they kicked ordinarily like most other teams. They're always so good in front of goal. So 10 goals, 2 for them. Saints were pretty good as well, 14 goals, 6. And yeah, they just put in a fairly mature performance. I think Windhager tagged Tim Kelly out of the game, 4 touches, so not a great one for him. And yeah, it looks. It wasn't the greatest surface to play on with the 2 Premier League games beforehand, and the amount of rain we've had. So, be interesting to see how the surface has recovered over the next couple of days. Hopefully, Friday it's not too bad. There's initially forecast rain that might be clearing up, but just want a nice game like that's not sort of marred by players slipping and sliding as they kind of were in this one. So that's how I went with my tips for the week, 7 out of 9. Let me know how you went, and I'll be back later in the week to preview round 20. Catch you all later. Bye.